talking about Bharti Airtel rights entitlement. But let's do one thing. Let's address this gas issue in detail. Aditya Suresh is joining us, Head of Research and Strategy India at Macquarie Capital Securities. Aditya, good morning. So, companies have raised prices, but the issue is that not only is this not enough to compensate for the current price hike, it's believed that in 2022 there will be sharper price hike. So my question to you is, do we start to see a reset of multiples on the lower side for some of these gas stocks now?
No, thank you, and thank you for having me on the show. So I think there are a few factors at play. The first factor, as you rightly pointed out, is that there has been a price hike, and that's been largely along expected lines, I think. But the big picture challenge is that we have further hikes to kind of pass through. And if you actually take a step back, what's really helped the downstream distribution sector in particular over the past few years has been that the cost of gas has been, the environment has been benign, whilst the alternatives, that the price has been going up. So you've been able to kind of push through higher margins here for the past 3 years. And that dynamic is kind of reversing itself, right? So if you then think about on the cost side of the equation again, you've obviously seen the domestic price hike as of last week, and that was up about, say, 60%. But the bigger challenge, which I think we need to work through, is simply that if you think about the next price hike, which the likes of ONGC will take in April, if you simply kind of apply the formula as is, and you kind of know most of the answer to that question already, you're looking at last week you had a 60% hike. We think that prices will be up a further kind of twofold in April, and that's just the domestic gas, right? Then if you kind of think about the international side of the equation, I think it's fairly, it's a tough spot, right? Because last year the average price for LNG was about, say, $5-6, and today you're, depending on which region you're at least about, say, 5 times over that in terms of spot pricing. And the outlook here remains fairly challenging. Just a contextual point that the price of gas in Europe, for example, as we speak, is the equivalent of $200 oil price, right? And all that kind of inflation is yet to flow through in estimates or numbers, and that's kind of a risk incrementally.
So, Aditya, good morning. Talking particularly about these city gas distribution companies, right? We do know that some of them will need to hike costs by at least 10% in order to pass on these price hikes. And in a situation where the demand environment is not that great, you don't know if that can actually get passed on. But how much of it you think is in the price, particularly for city gas distribution companies? Because I was looking at, say, a stock like Mahanagar Gas, it's already gone from almost 1,200 now to 1,080. You think there's more to go, and or is all the news already in the price?
I think to the extent earnings and earnings risk is kind of the way these stocks will react, I think that risk is yet to be fully captured in numbers. Okay. So our margin assumptions are meaningfully below where the consensus estimate is at, and that's because of the risk which we kind of spoke about. Now, just the big picture again is that to contextualize, if you think about the price hike required to keep your 1Q margins constant, for Gujarat Gas about 40%, for the likes of IGL up to about 80-90%, and this is on a, say, 12-month basis. So yes, you've kind of seen some kind of price increases to the customer here, but I think if you take the picture out here for the next 6-9 months, there's further substantial kind of price increases which are required, and the challenge is that from a kind of alternative price perspective, I think there are going to be challenges in terms of being able to pass on that incremental cost. That's part one. And part two is that even if you kind of go back in history and look at these companies, the annual average, the maximum price hike taken by the sector has been about, say, 20%. So to that extent, there is a lot of kind of cost pressure to kind of work through. Industry, I guess the other manifestation of this is in terms of lower volumes, and that's something which, again, is probably not in estimates which plays out here in the next few quarters.
Yeah, that explains.
So if the extent earnings is kind of the guide, then there probably is more downside, at least from an earnings perspective.
That explains your downgrades, Aditya. I think you've downgraded Gujarat Gas and IGL as well. So let's talk about the upstream, and let's try and figure out how much more upside. ONGC has already seen this spectacular rally. If I have the numbers right, I think your target price is 160. The stock's already at that level now. How should investors approach a stock like ONGC or maybe Oil India or GAIL? And, we've all forgotten the fact that at one point in time, I think it was 7-8 years ago, maybe longer, there used to be the subsidy sharing formula. It used to be a very messy sort of a setup. We're far away from that, but would you at all keep that possibility on the back burner as well, that some sort of a subsidy mechanism comes back in the play if this energy shock is going to last for 6 months, which a lot of people seem to be suggesting right now?
I think that the first point to note is simply that we don't see this as a blip. I think a lot of the investors we speak to, the basic assumption is that this is a short, sharp kind of impact. But I think the impact, at least which we see on the cost side, is more prolonged, right? And to that extent, it's something to work through here over the next, say, at least 3-4 quarters. Specifically on the upstream, I think the big picture remains that you're in an environment where, to the extent the current formula kind of maintains, then you're looking at domestic gas prices going from, say, $2 to $3, and the latest kind of reset, and $3 going to roughly about $6.50. And the $3 going to $6.50, you kind of already know the building blocks of that equation, and you know the answer to that as well. So there's a lot of kind of upstream kind of price. It's a favorable environment here for the upstream kind of companies. So tactically, I think we remain constructive to some extent on ONGC. I think that's a tactical kind of position. We do fundamentally like GAIL much better. I think that the challenge for GAIL has been that you've had a value stock with a declining kind of earnings trajectory because the gas marketing business, and that's about 25% of your profit. That business, which is again about 25%, the macro backdrop is substantially changed in their favor. So if you think about the profitability on some of their contracts, at least in theory, has substantially kind of improved in their favor. So what we are looking at is value, yes, but kind of improving growth, improving returns. So we like GAIL quite a lot here. It also kind of brings GAIL's some of the parts value into focus, and so fundamentally we can get far more constructive here in GAIL. That's kind of where we're positioned.
All right, thanks a lot for that. Since we are on this subject, it looks like there are price hikes by the hour, not by the day. Anshu is joining in, my colleague, to talk about the latest LPG price hike that has come through. Anshu, hi, good morning.
Hi, good morning. So considering that in the last 1 year, LPG prices for cylinder, for 14 kg cylinder, has increased over 200 rupees. And not just that, there is also impact on the subsidy, as government is not giving subsidy to many users. It is giving it to only certain users which are away from the bottling plant of LPG. So now LPG pricing in India is done on the basis of import parity price, and it is based on Saudi contract price. So during last October 2020 to April itself, there was a rise in prices in Saudi contract price from $359 to $607, and with crude price increasing and the natural gas price increasing, the whole energy equilibrium is impacted, and the LPG price is also increasing along with petrol and diesel prices, which we can see that every day almost 25 paisa hike we can see. Back to you.
Okay, Anshu, thanks a lot for that. Well, let's now do one thing. Let's take the 9-10 calls. The pre-open has settled, and once again, it's very unlike the SGX Nifty. It's actually up 40 points. Now, what that would mean is, if indeed we open here, that would be very close to all-time high, within 0.5% of all-time high for the Nifty. The mid-cap index, remember, is already at all-time high. So that will start at a fresh all-time high. Sudarshan, if we start here, you trade the index, and what's your 9-10 call?
Well,